Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to both of the nominees today. Great to have you here. Look forward to working with you. Ms. Cabanis, let me start with you. You and I were discussing earlier today data privacy, data security. That's something that's very important to me. As Attorney General of the state of Missouri, I launched an investigation of the Equifax data breach, which affected quite a few members of my state, residents of my state. The OPM data breach predated Equifax's, and I'm afraid was quite a bit larger. If confirmed, you'll enter the job of director at a time of heightened threats to our IT infrastructure. What lessons and best practices will you bring to OPM to ensure it is appropriately fortified, shall we say, and that the sensitive personal information of federal employees is protected?
I would continue to work with the OIG's office, as I mentioned that I've worked with before on the breach. I've had an opportunity to meet briefly with the new CIO and the deputy CIO. I'm more positive about OPM's IT improvement than I've been in the past. They came from digital services. They're part of the original group who came in during the Obama administration. They're just incredible technical people who really are here just because they want to serve. And then I'd also want to work with GAO because I've worked with them as a partner, both their information technology people, but also their cybersecurity group, just to make sure that you've got that second, third set of eyes to make sure we're doing what's right. Because as I mentioned to you, OPM was one of the largest breaches when I worked on the committee, and my information was compromised as well. But it was not the only breach. We had significant breaches at IRS and then some other agencies that weren't necessarily in the press. So I've always found GAO to be an incredible partner in kind of having that overview because they, are got their finger on their pulse with DHS and US CERT, and knowing what the best practices are. So I really think it would be a collaborative effort. I'm no expert, but I know where the experts are.
Thank you for that. Let me draw your attention, both witnesses, to a headline that ran in the New York Times yesterday, a story that ran in the New York Times with this headline: how Chinese spies got the NSA's hacking tools and used them for attacks. Several weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal ran an expose on China's use of U.S. satellites, and every week we read about another technology that has been stolen by our adversaries, particularly China. If confirmed, you will both oversee large portions of the federal government that are directly affected by these stories, the management of the federal government's workforce, infrastructure, and of course the technology that the government acquires. Can you each describe for me why our government, which is the strongest in the world, appears to be so vulnerable? What's your view on this, and what changes do you propose to be made to address the kind of vulnerabilities that we're seeing reported in the press? Dr. Wooten, I'll let you go first.
Well, thank you, Senator. I agree that that is one of the most concerning areas of vulnerability for the United States. There are large nations, obviously, can shore up military threats to the nation, but the cyber threat is one that can be shored up by large, small nations and even non-state actors. If confirmed, I would work with the appropriate agencies, the Chief Information Security Officer, and others to look at resources that are necessary from a contracting perspective and ensure that we don't have procurement regulations that get in the way of getting the type of cyber defense resources that we need.
And just on that last point, Dr. Wooten, are you aware now of any such procurement regulations that you think are a hindrance to getting the resources that you need?
And Senator Hawley, thank you for that clarification question. Actually, as it stands right now, I am not presently aware, but I think because of the nature of the cyber threat, we have to continually scan their environment, and I think that's a question that I would need to put to the leadership from time to time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Ms. Cabanis.
I would definitely want to work with Dr. Wooten. And the reason I say that is based on my experience working on the Appropriations Committee and breaches that happened at large agencies, small agencies. Too often there was a pattern. Sometimes it was just lack of skill when it came to project management. Agencies thinking they needed to create their own systems with in-house as opposed to seeking expert advice from other agencies, or having difficulty developing their own requirements and then going to contractors who would write the requirements for them. And so the people in the agency might be great experts at what their agency did, but they weren't IT experts. So I would really like to work with with your office to find ways to like leverage that expertise, because I think some of the problems are agencies just operating in their own silos, in their own systems, creating vulnerabilities without even realizing they're doing it.
Very good. Dr. Wooten, a final question for you. Some of the procurement policies in the federal government, especially in the tech sector, are of concern to me, and I'd like to get your views on them. In particular, I recently had the chance to ask the chairman of the Joint Chiefs about Google's behavior in avoiding contracting with the United States government, DoD, and instead partnering with China. And he went further to say that he believes Google partners with China in ways that directly threaten the security of the United States. From your perspective, what needs to change on how the U.S. government engages in contracting with tech companies, and how do you see your role, if you're confirmed, in integrating DoD's procurement policies with those of OMB?
Senator, thank you for that question. The fact is that there are many non-traditional, if I can use that term, non-traditional contractors who are reticent to work with the federal government. They see us as too cumbersome. Some of the smaller companies see us as a bit cumbersome. And those are the very companies that we need to work with often in looking for the right solutions for cyber response. If confirmed, I will look for opportunities to find the best practices in federal government where agencies are able to find innovation within the four corners of the FAR. The existing innovation, they're already free to choose. But I would also consider hearing recommendations for innovations that perhaps are outside of that, to include understanding the judicious use of the transaction authority.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.